Coach, can you just kind of outline, the preparations, prior to January 2nd, what that was like? Obviously, you weren't here, the previous season, but you got here for this season. Just November, December, all those weeks when guys are saying they're going to go in the portal. What was the preparation like in advance of January 2nd?
I think the preparation for it really starts in the springtime. We can start to watch just college football again because we feel confident where we're at in high school recruiting at that stage, getting guys on official visits. But I think preparation for the portal starts in the springtime. You're starting to watch college football, starting to identify guys maybe at the FCS and G5 levels that could go in the portal at some point, if they want to the following year. So you start to watch that in the springtime. You start to gather notes and things of that nature. And then throughout the season, then we turn back into high school recruiting because we want to watch high school game tape on these guys. So we try to do 3 to 5 cut-ups on all of our priority targets. We want to watch games. And then about week 8 of our season, then we really, flip. And we go straight into what we would call portal recruiting and things of that nature, where we're strictly, hey, we're watching college football players. You're watching them because you think that they may go in the portal, right? And you're identifying them, creating your lists. And then once January 2nd hits and then they hit the portal, all right, now we're moving. We've already identified these guys. We think the talent level is there, and now we're moving with those guys.
So kind of as far as that goes, quarterback was going to be a major focus. When did Alonzo Barnett kind of come to the forefront on your board, and kind of how did that come together?
Yeah, I think you look at that, and again, it's kind of going back to the spring process. You start to identify and believe that people are going to go in the portal for one reason or another. Obviously, they were having a great year at JMU. Then you start to hear coaching rumors, and if a coach leaves somewhere, then you start to identify people on their roster. So I think that's how Alonzo kind of came up. They're having a great year, kind of chugging along there. Rumors came up that his head coach may leave, so now he becomes a guy that's on your radar. Now you can go back and watch all the games that he played and feel very comfortable about that. And I think you do that with a lot of people, not just the quarterback position. Quarterback position is obviously very unique, but you start to identify those guys, and you have a big list. Let's call it 50 guys, and then you whittle that list down into 12 guys that are going to become realistic once this thing really opens up. So I think middle of the season was when Alonzo came on our radar, and then we went and did all the evaluation pieces that we need to do. And a big part of this too, obviously you're not talking to the young men, but you can listen to them speak in interviews. You can read articles about them dating back in time, so you can kind of get an understanding of who they are and what they're going to bring to you before you actually get to talk to them, right? So I think we did a lot of research on him.
In terms of roster construction, what's your overarching strategic vision?
Really good players. It's
the mix between the portal, using the portal, high school recruiting. What's the big picture vision?
Got it. Yeah. So like Coach said, we're always going to high school recruit because I think philosophically it's easier to build a philosophy with guys who you bring in from high school and you build up through 4 to 5 years within your program, right? And then those older guys can tell the younger guys the stories of, hey, they asked me to do these things and then they took care of me contractually at the end of the day. For us, it's about 2 things. It's about production and professionalism. We ask you to do those 2 things, and then we can have very open and honest conversations about what that contract looks like for you on a year-to-year basis. But I always think there's going to be a balance. We're always going to recruit high school young men, and then part of roster construction these days is going to be through the portal and balancing those 2. Like the other day, we just brought a new guy on our staff, Trey Nair, who's our assistant general manager. We were going through our roster for next year already. Okay, we have these players exiting, okay, and we're targeting bringing in this many high school players while leaving enough room, and then thinking about attrition through your roster throughout the year.
In terms of contracts, when do those contracts start? Are they able to be 2-year contracts?
Yeah, you can do a multitude of things, and I think this is where alignment comes into play for me with our legal team, Chris McFarland, our compliance office. I think that we're restricted to do certain things with our contracts, but we are aligned in what we can do and cannot do, which makes it very easy for me to, when I'm talking to agents or players, like, hey, here's where we see this, here's how we can do this, and then it's pretty cut and dry from that standpoint. Contractually speaking, you can do multi-year contracts, you can do incentive-based contracts, you can do a lot of things with them, but it's what fits the kid, really, and what fits the program at the end of the day as well.
Do you have multi-year contracts?
I don't like to speak on anybody's contract. So
Nobody specific.
We've talked about the idea of. Have we got there yet? No.
How's it going, Coach?
Good.
Given how quickly the roster had to be constructed last season, barely any returning guys, how much was it of a great emphasis to keep guys on this roster that stood out to you throughout the season and are able to now contribute with new players that you think are going to fit well with them?
huge. It's a huge piece for us. I think the first thing, high school recruiting is probably the first thing in roster building, because they're the first ones to come on your radar. And then we do a major evaluation throughout the year. And obviously I wasn't here in spring ball, I got here during camp, but we started in camp, we followed up throughout the season, then we had a meeting at the end of the season to all be aligned with, these are the players that we would like to retain. Because that's where it starts for us, and bringing the right people and having the right people in the building. And I think you take a look at a guy like Preston Cushman, Lewis Carter. Those are guys who played good football for us last year, and they're also really good people and leaders in our building. And that's the foundation of what we're trying to build around people like that. So being able to retain those two guys and a multitude of other guys, and having the right people in the building I think it's setting a good foundation for us.
With regards to the Darian Mensa situation this past week, a Power 4 general manager told CBS Sports, quote, signed contracts mean nothing. Is that the experience that you're dealing with on the front end of this thing? And how do you try to safeguard against, late poaching at the end of the window?
Yeah, I think signed contracts do mean something. It depends on what is in the contract, and what your legal team and your university is comfortable with putting in the contract. You're never going to stop, and I don't know that situation, so I'm speaking in generalities here. You're never going to be able to stop certain things that happen within the portal. All we can do is control the relationships that we have in our building with our players, and talking to them, communicating with them, having open lines of communication. So if something ever comes up in our building and we're surprised by it, odds are we weren't doing a good enough job communicating with them, and that's our job. We need to communicate, and communicate at a very, very high and efficient level.
And then you were able to keep the player that entered the portal, was planning to enter the portal, Horace Lockett. So what was that situation like, and trying to make sure that he was obviously a player you guys valued to bring him back?
Yeah, Horace chose to, entertain the portal. And when anybody does that, everybody has their own reasons for doing so. And we never question anybody. We just try to, again, have open lines of communication with them. So he chose to enter the portal. That was his choice, no problem. I think he went on maybe one visit, and then we had another phone call. I talked to his mother on Christmas Eve. We had a lot of phone calls and a lot of positive communication. And ultimately, at the end of the day, continuity is a major piece of this. Horace's goal is to play in the NFL, right? And Horace, for him, continuity in Coach Martin and Coach Grinch's defense is a major piece of that, being able to go out and know what's expected of him on a daily basis instead of guessing what's expected of him by going to a different school. So we had that communication and conversations with him, and ultimately he felt like to get to where he wanted to go, this was the best fit for him. Now he has 2 years left, I understand that, but him playing in our defense next year is better suited for him to get to where he wants to go.
Trent, what has it been like working with Coach Frost on this roster, and how do you kind of have that back and forth between you guys? Because he's a head coach, and you're going after trying to construct a roster. We know kind of the relationships in the NFL with GMs and head coaches, but what's it like on a collegiate level like this?
Yeah, him and I, we have to be in lockstep with this. He doesn't want to handle the contractual side of this and the discussing of finances and what that looks like, and that's where I come into play for him, so he can focus on his team and his players and build those relationships with him. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we introduce players on his radar at the appropriate time. We don't want to inundate him with just our major list of guys that we're doing a lot of work on, because then he's gonna be like, kind of what are we doing here? When it gets to a certain point, we feel very good that, hey, this young man may come on a visit. We've had positive talks with this young man. Then we turn it over and he's able to watch it and say, hey, I really like where this is going. Let's get him on a visit and go from there with it.
How do you then kind of whittle down? Because I'm guessing then you have a lot of people that you look at, and so before it even gets to coach, so how do you kind of go through the process of whittling down the players that you do kind of put in front of coach?
Yeah, so we have and I won't call it a playbook, but we have a playbook, and I asked our offensive coordinator Scoop and Coach Grinch to basically identify players that they have coached with traits that those players had that made them good players for them. And then we go back and we watch those tapes to identify, okay, these are what they're looking for to play on their offense or play on their defense. So then when we identify players, that's how we identify them, based on players that they've had in the past that were high-level players with athletic traits per their position. So then we go back and we look at those players, and if they don't fit that mold, that's okay. They can go somewhere else, and we'll move on to the next guy. And that's how we build our initial list. And then the portal happens so fast, and young men fly off your list. it just whittles itself down. But you have that list of players that you feel very comfortable with, that they're going to fit within the scheme and the athletic traits of the position, and then we're able to go after them.
Will there be any changes to your guys' scouting schedule? Obviously, you talked about your, pillars and what you identified last year of when you would scout certain players. With no second quarter window this year, how different is that for you guys, and what will you be doing in the spring, scouting-wise? Is it still mainly high school, or are you going to be starting to look at potential opportunities in the next portal window? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so where we're at right now, we flipped back to high school recruiting. And so our personnel team with Trey Nair and Coach Beer and Coach Pirtle, those guys are in there watching high school tape right now. And we'll do that for the next couple of months, and then we'll get those kids on campus hopefully during spring ball, and then bring them back for official visits. And then really once the calendar flips to May, we'll go back into mode of, all right, now we're identifying sophomores that are getting ready to be juniors, freshmen who are getting ready to be sophomores, who have played football and produced at a high level, and start to watch their highlight tapes. That way we can build our game cut-ups for the following fall. And then we'll just spend time watching college football. Not just teams, but players. Our job is to watch players. We don't, scheme is part of it, but we don't really delve into the scheme issue of this. We watch players, and we'll watch a bunch of college football players because it gives us an idea of what is out there from a skill set standpoint, and then we'll start to build our pre-portal list, if you will, for guys who we think could, or for one reason or another, go into the portal from there.
Few more for Trent.
As far as a roster budget standpoint, where does UCF stack up in terms of rev share and NIL, maybe relative to the rest of the Big 12?
Yeah, I think Terry and our administration have done a great job putting us in a very advantageous place for this, to be able to compete. There's certain people who you read the stories and hear all these things. For me and my job, I can't believe everything. I have to go with what I have to work with, and Terry and again his team have done a great job with providing us the resources to be able to operate there. So if I were ranking us, I would put us up. We can compete with anybody, and at the end of the day too, it really comes down to identifying talent and the right people. For us, those are the two things: identifying the right people, identifying the talent, and then bringing them in. And if we can't, financially meet what that expectation is, that's okay. We move on to the next guy. You keep going at this, and you keep going and keep going until you find the right people to bring into your program.
You have a big evaluation role, obviously, in this. Is there a transfer too that you're particularly excited about that UCF got in?
Well, Alon's obviously. I mean, I think that's where any organization starts on the football fields with the quarterback, and he is. Everything that we thought he would be from a personality standpoint. Obviously, we haven't done anything on the field yet, but being dialed, being in there watching tape on a daily basis, feel very confident in what he'll bring to the organization. And then I have a special place in my heart for Duke Watson. I watched every one of Duke Watson's high school football games because we recruited him at the last place that I worked at, and so I got to see him perform live when I was there. So I have a special place in my heart for him, and I know what he can do talent-wise. But I think, at the end of the day, I think Coach hit on this as well, is we brought in high character players who have talent, who have played snaps. And I think that was a big part of our process when we were bringing kids in. It wasn't just me meeting with them or Coach meeting with them. It's a collective effort. And then we all are on the same page with this. Some young men we turn away because we don't think they're going to be a cultural fit for us. And they may be a high level player, but we don't need to bring that into our program. We're going to bring in the right people that are going to work with us.
Anything?
Well, I was curious, like you mentioned kind of like molding things to what Cooper and Grinch, the high level guys they've worked on. Do you have an example of that, and maybe some of the guys that you've recruited and how they compare to players that those guys have worked with before?
No, because Coach Grinch has obviously been doing this for quite some time. One of the guys on his list that he gave me was Nick Benito. And Nick Benito, I think, is playing for the Broncos right now, playing at a very high level. It'd be awesome to have him on our team, right? But from that standpoint, here's the size requirements for the position, and then here's the athletic traits. Now let's go out and find. We're not going to go find a Nick Benito. If we do, that's great for us. But let's find a similar player, because then they know how to work with those guys and how to fit them within their scheme, and then they don't have to worry about changing and adapting to what we give them. We want to be aligned and lockstep on this. Here's the expectation for the position. Now we want you to go out and find guys like that.
Kind of building on that question, ex-Coach Frost earlier, it seemed like a lot of production was brought in maybe from the FCS or G5 level. He says he also is in love with raw talent, maybe guys who have great athletic traits. Kind of what's the balance with you working with Coach and saying, like, this is the kind of guy we need?
Yeah, it's fun conversations. Sometimes they're tense. Him and I have a great relationship. And when I say tense, I mean that in a negative light. But that's just the way that this goes sometimes because there's opinions involved in this with player evaluation. And at the end of the day, we're going to make the best call. He's going to make the best call for what is best for the program. So I love talented athletic players too. I also love production, guys that have shown at our level or maybe the FCS level that they can produce. And I value that highly. And he does as well. He also likes just raw talented guys that he can mold as well. So it's a balance, and we have discussions about that and where we see them fitting. And then ultimately at the end of the day, he says, let's do it, and here, we're off and running there.
Do one more. Back on your payroll, did you work within rev share or were you also able to use additional NIL dollars?
I'm going to defer that question to Terry and his administration on that. They give me tools, and I take those tools and put the roster together from there.
What was it like dealing with agents?
I know there's a narrative out there about agents. I will say this, there are some really, really good people that take care of these young men and have their best interest. And I enjoy dealing with them, and we have healthy discussions a lot. And they teach me a lot, quite frankly, which is really nice. So I have a handful of guys that I talk to on a regular basis throughout every week, and they teach me things, and we have healthy discussions about how they see it from their perspective, and then I tell them how we see it from our perspective, and then there's a mutual marrying up of those two things.
All right, thanks everyone, thanks Trent.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.